Good morning, everybody. It's Randy Ray, the Literate Texan, and I am broadcasting from the little ranch on Driftwood today. And Book Trek 2023 is coming to a close. Summer Book Trek's been a lot of fun for me. I've especially enjoyed the Book Trek tags on Tag Tuesday from Steve Donoghue. And it just wouldn't feel like a Tag Tuesday if I didn't do one. This is the Book Trek Star Trek Voyager Tag, which is, before Discovery, my least favorite Star Trek show was Voyager. I just couldn't warm up to the two main characters. I didn't like Janeway. I mean, come on, she murdered Tuvok. And I thought Chakotay was really dull. So, and also, like many Star Trek shows, or a few Star Trek shows, but this one in particular, it doesn't stay as true to its premise as I would have liked. They're supposed to be dealing with a lot of difficulties, being trapped 70,000 years away from the Alpha Quadrant, or 7,700. I don't remember how many years away they are. But so, there's no place to get supplies. There's, things should be, over the course of the show, things should be getting more and more difficult, but they really don't. You only actually see that in a storyline called Year of Hell. If the whole series had been an extended version of Year of Hell, it would have stayed true to its premise. The other thing was, it starts off by breaking one of Roddenberry's rules about how there's supposed to be no conflict between the crew members, because Starfleet has evolved so much, So they try to get around that by having a bunch of Maquis on board. Maquis are terrorists who hate Starfleet. But they wrap up the conflict between the Maquis and the Starfleet officers almost immediately, like in the second or third episode of the first season. And I think it might have been given a little bit of lip service a little later. I did like a lot of the supporting characters. To me, if Tom Paris had been the focus of the show, I'd have been all right with that, because he was even more of a rogue than Captain James T. Kirk, who really wasn't as much of a rogue as his reputation says, but that's another video. At any rate, I'm going to revisit Star Trek Voyager, because I know that Steve said when he revisited The Next Generation, he warmed up to it a lot, and that was due to BookTube. So maybe I will warm up to Star Trek Voyager. Certainly be better than Discovery anyway. So here's the questions for the tag. Took me 3 minutes to get there, but I got there. The USS Voyager is equipped with bio-neural gel packs that are often more trouble than they're worth. Do you suffer from any kind of allergies? I'm allergic to sulfa, which is an antibiotic that sometimes would be useful to treat the occasional bouts of cellulitis that I have in my legs. I have lymphedema, so my legs are swollen, especially my right one. So that's an occasional medical problem that usually involves a stay in the hospital as they intravenously give me drugs, because when those infections go septic, it's life-threatening. I'm also horribly allergic to cats. I dated a woman who had a cat 25 years ago. It didn't work out, and part of the reason it didn't work out was, we lived together, and I liked the cat. The cat's name was Bailey, and the cat warmed up to me eventually too, but I was always sick, always. And I've always been horribly allergic to cats. Can't touch them, can't be around them. According to my allergist, I took one of those allergy tests where they poke you in the back. I'm also allergic to dogs, but I don't have an allergic reaction to dogs. Go figure, right? But that's okay, because by temperament, I'm a dog person anyway and not a cat person. Next question. Captain Janeway is a terrific starship captain. Yeah, when she's not murdering Tuvok, who sometimes doesn't know when to back off. Do you share this trait? This trait of being a terrific starship captain? Yeah, I like to think so. I think he's talking about doesn't know when to back off. Do you share this trait? Can you ever lose focus and need to be pulled away from something? I would say in my case, being unable to back off is an example of me being hyper-focused. And I am on medications now. There are some conversations that I should have never started and should have backed away from sooner. But that was, like I say, a side effect of my medications. You know what? I was probably like that a little bit when I was drunk too, but I've learned a little bit of restraint since I got sober 10 years ago, or 9 years ago, whatever. I'm working on year 10 right now. Next question. First Officer Chakotay returns to Starfleet from the terrorist Maquis. How readily would the friends of your youth recognize you today? I'm still in touch with most of the friends from my youth. I grew up in a small town in Bonham, Texas, and we were a pretty close-knit group. And so, yeah, most of them would have no trouble recognizing me. You know, I still have dinners with them occasionally. I had a couple of friends that came over every Sunday night for about 10 years while I was still drinking. So yeah, I don't think, you know, there are some acquaintances from my youth who might not recognize me because I got fat. You know, there's Randy before he discovered carbohydrates, and then there's Randy after he discovered carbohydrates. I'm kind of like Elvis Presley in that respect. Next question. Lieutenant Tuvok's precise age is a source of speculation on Voyager. Do you feel like your chronological age? Younger? Older? I'm 53 years old, but I've got the body of a 63-year-old man. I do not feel my age. I actually feel younger than my age mentally. Some of that's probably due to a certain amount of immaturity that my ex-wife would be happy to point out to anyone who would care to listen. But, you know, I think I still have a lot of the same youthful enthusiasm and maybe even some of the same insecurities that I had when I was in my 20s or 30s. You know, I was talking with a friend of mine last night, one of my friends from high school, and we were talking about how it seems like only yesterday, literally just like yesterday, we're driving over to my friend Larry's house to play penny ante poker and listen to Strong Persuader on cassette tape. Strong Persuader is one of my favorite Robert Cray albums. That was on constant rotation with Eric Clapton's timepieces. And boy, those were some big times on Friday nights. But yes, I feel younger than my chronological age. I feel like I'm still in my 30s. And frankly, and I was asked about this weekend, I tend to date younger women. That's just how it happens. Those are the ones that seem to be attracted to me for whatever reason. And I'm always amazed that any woman is attracted to this sick, middle-aged man. But, you know, when I was growing up, 50 wasn't middle-aged. They tell me that 70 is the new 50 now. So my plan is to stick around for another 40 years. The doctor gives me 15 to 20 years because of the cancer. But I thought, you know what? I don't have to limit myself to that. Number 6. These are numbered, but I haven't been reading. Anyway, next question. Chief Engineer B'elanna Torres is half-Klingon and half-wimp. Does your own nature contain any radically different elements that you somehow keep aligned? Yes, I have an angry streak. And I'm generally a really, really sweet guy. But there are some things that really get under my skin. Pick on a child in front of me, bully a child in front of me, and you'll see the angry side of me really, really quickly. That's a big trigger for me. I don't like bullies to begin with, and I really don't like bullies who pick on children. I generally, if I get to a point where I'm in a room with someone where I wind up raising my voice, I remove myself from the situation before it escalates. There are some things I'm not going to share on this channel. And the reason for that is one of the things that I'm not going to share on the channel because it's too personal. But let's just say there was an incident 25 years ago where I learned my lesson about that sort of thing. Next question. Tom Paris is Voyager's Dauntless pilot. He's also my favorite character on the show. What's the largest mechanical object you've ever piloted? I've driven a couple of U-Haul trucks, but generally not the biggest ones, not the vans, but the size above that, which isn't very big. But I also drive, my regular vehicle is a Dodge Ram 1500. It's just a half-ton truck, but it's the mega cab, which you can't get a mega cab 1500 anymore. You have to get a 2500 or 3500 to get a mega cab now. I understand. That's the last time I checked anyway. But anyway, really big back seat. And I did that because I had small children at the time and I wanted to be able to go places, and seating in cars matters to me because of my size. And I was driving, when we had the kids, a Kia minivan. And I wasn't comfortable in there. It had a really small steering wheel, so, I was able to fit, but it was a tight squeeze. The mega cab I have no trouble fitting into. So anyway, I drive a large car to begin with. I'm not great at parallel parking, but it didn't come up that often around here. Next question. Neelix, Voyager's cook and morale officer, once said, "It's nice to be nice." Are you nice, just in general? Yeah, I'm probably one of the nicest guys I know. It gets commented on a lot in my private life. I'm well liked around these parts. So sometimes I'm nice to a fault. Sometimes my reputation for being a nice guy precedes me. I got a text one night from a number I didn't recognize. And it said, "Hey, I'm looking for Randy Ray." And I said, "Well, here I am, And I said, "Who's this?" And it was so-and-so from AA. And she didn't have any money for groceries. But I didn't really know her. I'd just seen her a couple times. She said, "I didn't have any money for groceries, and my AA sponsor said I could contact you." And I said, "Well, okay." I said, "Why don't you come over and get $100 so you can go buy yourself some groceries?" And she said, "Well," she also said that sometimes you need a little help around the house. And believe it or not, Driftwood Ranch doesn't clean itself. So I hired her to clean my house too for a little while. But we have a pretty large and active recovery community around here. So I get asked for help a lot, but less so now that I'm sick, because most people around here know that I'm sick. But yeah, I'm a nice guy. I don't know if that's a great quality or not. Sometimes I wish I was more of a James Bond type, a little bit of a harder edge. But I don't think anybody'd buy it, even if I tried to make that my new persona. Next question. 7 of 9, 7 of 9, is a recovered Borg drone who finds a new family on Voyager. What are your thoughts on the concept of found family? How close are your friends to family? Well, I touched on this a little bit in my previous answer, but most people know that I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous, which is not to say that I'm supposed to stay anonymous. But, if somebody has a drinking problem, they might want to contact me and ask a few questions, which is always cool. Contact information is always below in the description. But I'm not an expert. I don't speak for the organization. I'm not a representative anyway. I'm just another guy drinking coffee and talking about my experiences down there. But the people in Alcoholics Anonymous have become my large, mixed up, extended, dysfunctional family. And I am close with my family. I have an aunt and uncle that I'm in contact with constantly. I have a sister that I'm still in contact with constantly. Of course, my daughters mean everything to me. I try to stay in contact with my son. I text him every week, ask him if he wants to get together. He responds maybe once a month, but I haven't seen him in over a year, which is really weird because he just lives across town. And we're not mad at each other. I don't know. Well, I'm not mad at him. Maybe he's mad at me. I don't know. But, he's made plans to come over a couple times and not shown up. So I'm a little estranged from him for whatever reason. I'm still great friends with my mother-in-law, even though, her daughter doesn't have any use for me. So, but yes, most of my friends are in recovery from alcoholism and drug addiction, and most of them are like family. Yesterday, I wasn't feeling well. I needed a prescription picked up, and I needed some lunch because my fridge is bare. Contacted my friend Hunter, said no problem. He'll come over and take care of it for me. Hunter took care of me after my surgery about 1.5 years ago, and taking care of me is not a lot of fun. There were some functions that I just couldn't perform, and they're not functions you would ask just anybody to help you with, because of the broken arm and because of my size, the combination of those two things, it was really difficult to keep myself clean and bathe and all the rest. And he helped with all that without batting an eye. He's a wonderful person, but he's as much of a brother to me as anybody. And and I could go on. There's a group of women who make sure that I have food and that my apartment is reasonably clean. I refer to those women as Randy's Angels. One of them at one point was talking about getting satin jackets printed up with the phrase Randy's Angels on the back of it, which I thought was hysterical. I have an ex-girlfriend that I broke with. I broke up with her like 4 years ago, but we're still friends. I'm friends with almost all of them. But anyway, she gets really jealous and angry when she hears about Randy's Angels, which I always get tickled at. Next question. Ensign Harry Kim is perpetually awestruck and dumbfounded, except in Timeless. How annoying are you? Well, I don't know. I know I was really annoying when I was drinking. I can be annoying. My childlike enthusiasm can be a bit much for people. I'm a morning person. That drives a lot of people nuts. Seems like there's just not very morning people around here. I think the problem is they don't get enough sleep. They don't go to bed early enough, so they're always tired. And that's why they're not morning people. It doesn't have anything to do with them just naturally being a night person. But I don't feel like I've annoyed too many people on BookTube yet, but maybe I have. They just probably hadn't said anything to me about it. I do remember when I first started going to AA, I pissed off somebody down there. He just flat out didn't like me. And I didn't know about it until another friend of mine, who got sober at the same time I did, overheard him talking bad about me before a meeting. And he went over and told that guy if he ever heard him say anything bad about me again, he called me fat for one thing. Doesn't bother me. I was not under the illusion that I was skinny or short, or quiet or humble or any of the rest. But anyway, my buddy went over and told him, he said, man, if I ever hear you talking bad about this guy again, I will kick your ass. And I didn't know about this until like last year. He told me the story. But the guy, because my buddy's kind of a rough guy, he's tough. He's not someone I would want to be in a fight with. And if I did need backup, he'd be the guy to go to probably. So he told me that about a week later, he was in a meeting and there was another new guy there. And the guy who didn't like me was sitting next to the new guy, and he told him, he said, I'm going to tell you one thing right now. Don't talk bad about that fat guy over there because that other guy will kick your ass. That made me laugh. So, yeah, apparently I'm annoying somebody out there, man. And final question. Amelia Earhart was the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. Have you ever met a famous person? If not, have you ever come close? I feel like this could be a whole video unto itself because I have met some famous people and my standards of fame are also really low. So let me try to go back as far as I can. I think the first person that I could legitimately call famous that I met was Ann Richards. She was running for governor of Texas at the time against Clayton Williams. It was a big Texas oil man. And I thought Clayton Williams was really eloquent and had a lot of great ideas until I heard Ann Richards talk. And that's when I realized, you know what? I'm just cursed to be a Democrat in Texas for the rest of my life. But anyway, she was lovely and charming, eloquent, well-spoken, quick on her feet. I got to shake her hand. I got to ask her a question. Her answer was just as funny as I expected it to be. I believe I asked her if she was going to run for president after she finished her 2 terms as governor. And she said, oh, hell no, honey. I'm not crazy. And I can't think about Ann Richards without thinking about Molly Ivins, who was a reporter, I remember, from the Dallas Times-Herald, who also wrote books, and she was also a big Texas Democrat. And she was good friends with Ann Richards. And when I met her, she told me a story about Ann Richards when, her husband was still living, was at some kind of breakfast with a bunch of the Texas politicians down in Austin. And they were sitting around, the men and their wives, and one of the good old boys starts telling a story about how when he was driving to work, he had seen some woman jogging, and she was apparently, let's just say, buxom, okay? And the guy went on and on about how buxom she was, so much so that he drove around the block so he could look at her again. And he's telling this story in front of all the other good old boys at the table. The other women are like, and when he finishes and all the guys stop giggling and stuff, Ann Richards puts her hands up on the table and she says, well, girls, Any of y'all seen any guys with big dicks lately? That's one of my favorite Ann Richards and one of my favorite Molly Ivins stories. But also, I met Jerry Jeff Walker, who was also a big Texas Democrat. He's a singer-songwriter who co-wrote Railroad Lady with Jimmy Buffett, among many other things. You probably know him from writing Mr. Bojangles. Guy's terrific. And he performed before Ann Richards came out to speak and after Ann Richards came out to speak. He did the same thing when Bill Clinton was in town in 92. But there's a song called, the chorus goes, "It's up against the wall, redneck mother." But he had changed the words to, "It's up against the wall, Republican president." Anyway, he was actually taller than I am. I'm 6'3", and I believe he was 6'5" or 6'6". He was a really, really big guy. But it was really cool getting to meet him. I was in New York City one time, and we were at the bar in the Paramount Hotel on 46th and Broadway. I don't remember the name of the bar, but I do remember the name of the hotel. And the guy who played Norm on Cheers was there. And of course, this was during my drinking days. And I was still dating the woman with the cat. And I was pretty buzzed because, I mean, it had to have been noon or something. And so I walked in and, I was a bar fly. I mean, I went to the bar every day. And I knew everybody at the bar, Whatever it is that I do, I generally do it every day. So there was this guy sitting at the bar that just looked vaguely familiar to me. And I was like, "Hey, man, how's it going?" He's like, "Hey," and holds up his beard just like normal. George Wendt is the guy's name. So I met him really briefly, but I didn't make a big fuss about it, I saw David Chappelle at the Improv before he was really famous. Probably the best stand-up comic I've ever seen, and I've seen a few. But I did know Bud Friedman, the man who launched the Improv, because when I worked at Hotels.com, I always booked his reservations in New York City for December shopping days. If you don't know a lot about tourism and that sort of thing, the 2 weeks immediately following Thanksgiving in New York City, if you've got the money, it's traditional to go to New York City for shopping and seeing the lighting of the tree. And it's insanely hard to get a hotel room in the city for those dates. You have to book way in advance. Usually there's a 2-night minimum. Some hotels have a 4-night minimum. They want prepayment on a credit card, and you can't get a refund once you booked. But Bud Friedman probably booked his wife and his stay there with me every year for 10 years. And anyway, so I could always get free tickets to the Improv in those days. Of course, Bud's no longer with us, which is too bad because he was always really cool to me. I didn't meet him in person, but I talked to him on the phone at least once a year. And he was always happy with the hotel that I booked for him, even when I was a manager and was no longer taking calls from clients on a regular basis. I always took his calls because for one thing, he was always so nice and appreciative, but for another thing, I did like having free Improv tickets whenever I wanted, and I only lived about 1.5 miles from the Improv. I also saw Dave Chappelle in New York City when he was getting on what do they call them, a ferry, while I was getting off the ferry because I had a meeting in New Jersey that day. And I think New Jersey was right across from New York. Now, I may be confused about the geography there. It's been a long time. So there's also a more or less minor country western singer that I got to know a little bit while he was still living here in Austin. And he's hardcore old school country guy. I'm not going to mention his name, but he had lost his fiance in a car accident. She was coming to see him after she had just left her husband. And I had lost my mother and the girlfriend within the previous month or two myself. And so we wound up at a bar together. And after he finished his set, I knew him because I'd gone to school with one of his band members, and he had introduced me. But we got really insanely drunk, and I'd been drinking and other stuff all day long since like 9 a.m. It was my day off, or I had called in sick anyway. And so anyway, we just talked and talked and talked. I have no recollection of anything that we talked about, but I do remember at the end of the conversation, he put his hand on my shoulder. And he said, "Randy, it sure is nice to talk to somebody that understands. The next thing I remember, I woke up on the floor in a friend of mine's apartment, high school buddy of mine's apartment, next to the guy from his band that I knew. And we both looked at each other and he said, man, the hell am I doing here lying in the floor here with you at Larry's apartment? And I said, I don't know, man, when did we get here? And the night went from bad to worse from there, but it didn't involve any more famous people. I also met Chris Wall, a great Texas country singer-songwriter, one of the best songwriters I've ever heard. He wrote the song Trashy Women, which was recorded by Confederate Railroad and was a big hit. But his version of it's way better. If you get a chance, you know what? I'll link to Chris Wall's song in the comments here. And then there's also a reasonably locally famous country western singer-songwriter named Brian Burns, who retired from country western music because he developed voice problems. He's got spasmodic vocal dysphonia. Same thing Diane Rehm has. Scott Adams has it too, but nobody wants to listen to Scott Adams speak anyway. But he retired from the music business, and he called me up one day because he knew I'd been taking guitar lessons and asked me if I'd like to buy one of his guitars. And there's a guy named Vince Paulus in Gainesville, Texas, which is about, 45 minutes north of me. You know, it's north of me, but it's not so far north that I'm at the casino, because it's not in Oklahoma, it's in Texas. But he's a craftsman, and he custom makes guitars for singer-songwriters. And the guitar that Brian wanted to sell me was a Paulus. And everybody always thinks I'm confused and that I've got a Les Paul that I'm bragging about and just can't sort out the name. And they would have reason to assume that because of the mad cow disease symptoms that I have lately. But no, it's a Paulus, and it's a beautiful handmade guitar. It's also a piece of folk art. It's got a beautiful Texas flag on the back of it. So, if you're playing for people, you can turn the guitar around, show it to people and stuff like that. But Brian Burns and I have actually become friends through the years, and he's terrific performer. Wrote incredibly great songs. Now he's a web designer, and he's every bit as good as a web designer as he was as a singer-songwriter. So I'm really proud to know him. And then I met George W. Bush in Austin, Texas. We were touring the Capitol. It was a Sunday, so we didn't expect to see anybody famous. And we were standing around hungover and probably getting started on our buzz for the day. And we were laughing and joking about how funny it would be to run into George W. Bush. This is when he was the governor of the state rather than the president of the United States. And but anyway, we were just standing around talking, and he had walked up behind us on the stairs of the Capitol. He said, "Hey guys, how's it going?" When they talk about, former presidents that you'd enjoy having a beer with, I get that about him. He just had that kind of charisma and charm about him. Just a good old boy from Texas. The kind of guy that I could see, teaching a civics class at my local high school or something. So, I don't know. That's about it for famous people, and most of them aren't particularly famous. I came within a few feet of shaking Bill Clinton's hand. Oh, I forgot, Jimmy Carter. I met Jimmy Carter. He was doing a book signing. I waited in line for 2 hours to get my book signed. And my buddy, who also went with me to get the book signed, was a history major in college. He's dead now, bless his heart. But it was really, really cold that day. And but he wanted to meet Jimmy Carter. He wanted to meet one of the presidents of the United States. And while we were standing in line, everybody was talking about how fast Jimmy Carter could sign a book and get people through the line. It was at the local Hastings bookstore and record store. And my friend, his name was Charlie, and he was a Republican, told me that the reason he's able to sign his name so fast is he had lots of practice signing vetoes when he was still the president. I guess Carter was a big veto-happy president, but anyway, that's got to be it. That's got to be it in terms of famous people. I did some work for Thomas J. Leonard, who founded the profession of being a personal life coach, and you never hear much about him, but he was a really interesting guy. I was a ghostwriter for him for a while, and that was a really fun and interesting experience. So I do have some background in some of this personal development, self-help stuff that I make so much fun of all the time. But he was great. Died way too young. And then I don't know. That's it for my Star Trek Voyager tag. You know, I'm not going to tag anybody in this one because I think all the people I tag are already going to know about it. So if you want to do it, man, just do it. And I'll be back with something else soon. Until then, drink lots of water and stay hydrated, folks, and stay sexy.